Hi everyone, I am Jen from Noteworthy by Jen, and today we're here to pump up the elementary rhythm reading. About me, I've been teaching for 18 years. I've taught everywhere from preschool music through 12th grade music, including special education preschool and self-contained classes. I live in Michigan and I have 3 daughters, a husband, 2 dogs, and 2 cats. I am ORF certified. I've also taken ORF curriculum in design and elemental composing. I've also taken Kodai level 1, MLT level 1 with a strings emphasis, intro to the Alexander technique, and education through music courses. My style is purposeful, practical, and playful. Side note, I don't normally have pink hair, but my daughters really wanted to have funky hair colors this summer, so we're doing it. This presentation is for elementary music teachers who want to learn new and innovative ways to teach and reinforce rhythm reading. So I hope you get several good ideas that help you today. Let's start at the beginning. So before you can do anything with rhythms, students have to have a solid sense to be able to feel and demonstrate the beat. Then you can add things on to that. So microbeat is the pulse we typically define as the beat, right? And then this is terminology used in music learning theory, or sometimes called Gordon. And then the macro beat is the beat that signifies kind of the feeling of the downbeat in a duple or a triple pattern. So like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it's good for kids to be able to feel both of those. If you want more information on that, look it up. So, some beat activity ideas. You can pat a beat to a recorded song. So that's a really simple thing. Take a song you're already listening to, pat your laps, maybe, pat your shoulders. Okay, now let's move it to our head. Those sorts of things. You could point to a heart, or as in your heartbeat, or other icons while singing a known song. So you might put it up on the board and have people point, or you might have everybody have their own paper in front of them. Bow, wow, wow. Whose dog art thou? Little Tommy Tucker's dog. Bow, wow, wow. You could also play instruments to the beat. That takes a little more coordination and they tend to get a little more distracted. So make sure you can do the first 2 of those things before you add instruments. You can count how many sounds the teacher is clapping. How many sounds did I just clap? 6. And there's something we're going to add on with that later. Body percussion. You can echo after the teacher to the beat. Then they echo after you. Keeping the beat with beat buddies. So when I first talk about the beat, I bring out this, which is from IKEA, and it's a giant heart. And we talk about how our heartbeat is very much like the pulse we feel in music. And if it can be at different speeds, but it stays steady. Like if you were running, it would be a fast beat. If you were sleeping, it would be a slower beat. And then it stays steady once it gets there. So these larger ones are great. And then if you get lucky, certain times of the year you can even find these, which are little ones. And you have to be a little careful because there's Velcro on certain parts, so you have to have them. You can either pat them in the middle for the beat. Later on, if you want to do rhythm, you can do this, or you could hook them together and maybe do beat, 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 rhythm, 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 that sort of thing. But I have a class set of these. I use my large heart several times before I ever bring these out, so they don't really know they're coming. Another thing you can do is copy the beat to In the Hall of the Mountain King with a puppet. And this is a Folkmanis puppet, and you want to get one of the full body ones because you can use arms and legs. And then I like to do it to the In the Hall of the Mountain King and just have motions. They are so enamored when there's a puppet up in front of them. So let's talk about rhythm syllables. So when we are talking about rhythm syllables, there's lots of different types of systems that you could use. Kodai would use ta, ti, ti, tiri, tiri, or some people say ticka, ticka. You've got music learning theory, or Gordon, which is do, day, do today, ta. Takadimi is ta, ta, di, takadimi. Numbers would be 1, 1, and 1e, and a. And we all have different reasons why we like these rhythm syllables. Maybe it's very percussive and it feels like what a brass player would articulate with. Maybe it feels like you like that every time there's a downbeat, it's do. Or maybe you like numbers because it transfers over to teaching band really well later. Well, what system should you use? Studies have shown students learn and are equally accurate when clapping or saying the rhythms, despite which system they were taught, as long as the teacher is consistent. So what does that mean for you? Do your research into what system makes the most sense for you, and then be consistent. Really, students are able to transfer these things over to any system once they get to middle school and high school, but if they have that solid sense of beat and the ability to do some rhythms early on, it's great. So here are some beginning rhythm activities. First, you're going to start by adding one single change to a steady beat. So don't start by doing a million different things. It might be a rest. It might be making 2 sounds per beat. So which beat has no sounds? Listen to my beat and tell me which beat has no sounds. I'm going to do 8 beats. So that's where we take that clapping idea and counting how many claps there are, and we're transferring it over now. So they'd be like, number 5 didn't have anything. Which beat has 2 sounds? Now they're saying, okay, 2 has something that's a little different. There's other activities you could do this with. So for the bunny, if you know that Sleeping Bunny song, see the little bunny sleeping till it's nearly noon. See if you can wake them with a happy tune. Oh, how still are they ill? Wake up soon. Hop, little bunnies, hop, hop, hop. Hop, little bunnies, hop, hop, hop. So you could have a bunny that hops up on a certain beat. And maybe that is the one that gets 2 sounds. Or maybe it's sleeping on a certain beat and that gets no sounds. So you could say, okay, there's 4 beats up on the board and here's my bunny. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, which one had 2 sounds? Or you could be like 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one did they sleep on? And you could have kids go through and do this as well. So that's a great idea. Then you can add in more rhythms. You can echo body percussion patterns. So you start with 2 levels only. Then they do it. Then you can add snapping, clapping, patting, and stamping until you have all 4 levels. Now you do have to make it still playable. If you go too crazy, no one's going to be able to copy you. So it still needs to be something they can do. You increase the amount of levels and difficulty of the rhythms over time. Keep in mind when you're doing echoing of patterns, you can go beyond what your students are learning as far as what you're writing down. So this should be taking their brains into the next level of the rhythms. So it's kind of front loading them for rhythms to come. Follow along with written rhythms. So icons first and then notes. So icons are just little pictures. So maybe it was train, train, choo-choo, train. So it would be like a train, and then 2 little puffs of, steam or smoke, and then train. And that would be one way for them to look at written rhythms without actually having the notes there. And then you can transfer it over to notes later. Read simple rhythms with lots of variety in activities. This is key. I feel like a lot of us get stuck in a rut and we're like, okay, just read that rhythm. Great job. Okay, next one, read the rhythm. Great job. Kids start zoning out and they don't care anymore. So I have rhythms of the day up on the board when my students come in every day. There's 4 of them. I happen to have the game plan curriculum, and so I have 4 cards in a row, and I just put them in those sentence strip holders. And we go through and we do our rhythms of the day. And when we first start, we read 1 measure. And then a few weeks later, we'll start reading 2 measures in a row. A few weeks later, I might have them read 3 or 4 measures in a row, and some classes get there faster than others. And then I might throw things off. They think, okay, we've got it all down. I'll say, okay, now read this measure backwards. And it just makes their brain have to think really hard. Now make sure they can read them all forwards really well first before you try doing something backwards. Read cards with a beat in the background. So if you play a woodblock or a drum or something in the background, it really keeps them from rushing. Or you can have them tap their toes inside their shoes, because otherwise they tend to take off on the simpler parts of the rhythm. Rhythm cards continued. Read cards while music plays in the background. This is a great opportunity to use any pop songs that you might have found that kids are really digging, and you don't necessarily have to do any certain activity with it. You're just using it as the beat in the background while they clap rhythm cards, and they get excited because they feel like you're connecting with who they are. Read rhythms using props. This is one of my favorites. All right, so a couple things I've been using these spinny soccer balls, which you can find on Amazon. I forget how much it was, but you can get them in bulk for pretty cheap, and so these were worth it to me. I like it because I always bring them out for a day or two where I'm just like, hey, look what I found. My daughter got this as a present at a birthday party, and I can do rhythms with it. And I like how it shows the duration of sound, and you can stop it for when it is a rest. And then a couple classes later, then they realize, oh, I have one for each one of them, and we get to use them and do the rhythms. And they're really engaged with that. They really love these. Then there's pop tubes. You can get these from the Dollar Tree. I don't know what the name is exactly. They come in a packet of 2 for $1.25, at least last time I saw. And these are kind of fun because when you do, like, you can do ta, ta, beat, beat, ta, ta, 2, 3, 4. So there's kind of fun things. And then sometimes you have to reset them up before the next rhythm. But it just gets kids thinking about duration of sound and rest as well. Chickens. These are at the Dollar Tree as well. These are a little harder because they make a sound in and out. Ta, ta, eat, ta. So, but it's very fun. They enjoy them a lot. Again, the duration part, a little harder to make them do like a half note or something, but it makes for a fun variety, a way to do rhythms that maybe they haven't done before. Skeleton hands. These are also from the Dollar Tree. So I got these. They're salad tongs, technically. And I always introduce them to my students and go, you guys, I was at the Dollar Tree and I found these salad tongs. Clearly they were mislabeled because these are meant for clapping rhythms. And they always just look at me and roll their eyes. And so for a lot of October, I use these and point at them and, play games with them during class. And then the last class before Halloween, I bring out 2 bags that have skeleton hands enough for the entire class, and we do rhythm reading with them, and they love it. One tip, I put dots on all of the right-handed ones, I think, yep, and then I don't on the other, and then when we go to put them in bags, I have one bag of right hands and one bag of left hands, and it keeps it simpler. But one of the keys is the buildup of anticipation. Make sure they don't get them the first day you bring them out. You use them several days, and then they finally figure out, oh, I get to use them too. And I kid you not, my students hardly ever figure out that a class set is coming, even though I've done this multiple times. They're always like, no way, we all get to use them, and they just start freaking out. If you have any other ideas that you've thought of for props, please email me because I would love to hear them. Play along videos from YouTube are great. Whatever the It's Corn song is of the year, normally someone has made one. Rhythm cards with movement breaks we'll talk about, and desktop percussion. So this is how I do rhythm cards with movement breaks. It's something called Rhythm and Shake. I put a rhythm on the board. They know when they see a rhythm, they have to sit down and immediately start practicing it quietly to themselves, whatever that rhythm is. And then if something like this pops up afterwards, they have to do jumping jacks until they see a rhythm. If they see a rhythm, they have to immediately sit down and practice it quietly. Once we do it as a class, something else will pop up. Sometimes it's a movement. Sometimes it'll say, great job, and they have to look at the person next to them and go, great job. And then we continue on. I believe I have changed these, if you've purchased them before, where now you can open them in PowerPoint and you can rearrange the rhythms and the movements so the kids don't know where they're coming, and you can switch things around. Desktop percussion was something I came up with during COVID because we didn't know if we'd be able to use instruments, but it's super fun and I still use it to this day. Even if my kids are coming to music class, I'll be like, hey, bring some pencils and a book today, and we do percussion with a book and with body percussion, and it's just a ton of fun. So kids really enjoy that. Write the room activities. So if you're looking just for kids to get used to writing what notes look like, there's tons of them on TPT. I'm not going to direct you to any specific ones, but just look up Write the Room music activities. Rhythm cubes. So these are, I believe, 1-inch foam cubes that I got, and for me, I made different levels. So for the orange and yellow, I put tas and TTs and rests, and you can just roll them and then write and read them. I got other colors. The blue ones have a half rest and a half note on them. Purple, tiri ti, tika ti, whatever you call it. My green ones have some tika tikas on them. And then my red ones have tom ti or cinco pa. And so I oftentimes will have my students take like 3 of the orange and yellow ones and then add whatever new rhythm we're working on into it so that they practice the new rhythm. It's a good center activity, and it's good just for a kid who's done early. Okay, go grab some rhythm cubes and see what you can do. It could also help them do chance composing. You could have them work with a partner and see if they can do 8 beats long, that sort of thing. Demonstrate a rhythm by putting out chairs as the beats and have students represent the sounds. So if you have 4 chairs out, we were doing a 4-beat measure. If one person was sitting in a chair, that would be a ta. If no one was sitting there, that would be a rest. If you had 2 kids sitting on a chair, that would be TT. For ticka ticka, I have 2 kids sit on the chair and 2 kids stand behind. That would be ticka ticka, because you really don't want kids having to sit on top of each other. That's a little uncomfortable and crazy. If someone was a whole note, they would lay across all 4 chairs, and that can be kind of fun too. Write rhythms on a piece of paper and put them on the music stands out front. So if you have 4 music stands and they put big rhythms out there, and then you can have kids like change one of the notes occasionally if there's multiple papers on each rhythm or on each music stand, and have the class read the new rhythm that they've written. So for dictation, meaning writing what you hear, or identification, saying what you see, I recommend bingo, music undercover, and monster match. This is going to help them use the common names of the notes and rests versus the rhythm syllables. Let's go back to which beat has no sound, 1 sound, 2 sounds. So you could say, I'm going to give you 4 beats. Listen to how many sounds are on each beat. If they can go back and go 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, then they can write that rhythm out. So that's where we're going with that. How many sounds do you hear? Which rhythm am I clapping? You could put 6 rhythm cards up on the board and then clap one of them. For my students, we use this. They hold it right in front of their chest so other people can't see what their answer is. And then when I say to hold up their answer, then they lift them up. And we talk about how I'm not interested in perfection. I want everyone to give their one answer, honestly. I don't want them copying other people. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Poison rhythm games. There's lots of things you can do with this. It's just like salami if you were playing that in solfege. Like you clap all the rhythms I clap except if you hear this one rhythm. And it could be you clap everything until you hear 16th notes in it, and then you don't clap. Or you could even do it with rhythm cards. You clap all the rhythm cards out loud unless you see a half rest, and then you do it quietly on your fingers instead. And you can assign points if you want to for the teacher versus students aspect of it. Rhythm dictation, I'm going to show you that in just a second. Rhythm races. So clap a rhythm. People work in teams to go down and find the rhythm that you just clapped. And it could be on those little scooters. It could be, I found these big inflatable tubes that have a toucan nose on them. And then they have to walk down and touch the toucan nose to whatever rhythm it is, which makes me laugh, which makes my day better. The secret chicken videos. The rest of season 2 is coming out this summer. I'm sharing this with permission. So this is Miss Steiger's music room. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation. If you look down beneath in the explanation of everything, the description of it in the YouTube video, you will see where you can go to get the secret code sheets for Secret Chicken. But kids love this. Basically, the chicken is hiding somewhere, and there's letters that will tell you, like the rhythm here will correspond with a letter on the code decoding sheet, and then it will tell you where the chicken's hiding. And here's what you'll hear.
All over chicken's pattern and your paper by splatting eggs all over the place.
Oh yes, and there's a new little guest.
This will make your job
So
extra
cute.
difficult.
So here we go. See if we can find where the rhythm starts. Yeah, so there's some little tricky things added in there, but kids absolutely love this and think it's amazing. So check out Secret Chicken. Write out the rhythm to a song you are already singing. This is very Kodai and Orff of you to already be doing this. So, and I believe MLT would go down that road as well. So you take something kids already know super well, and you talk about the rhythms that you find in certain sections of it that correlate to new rhythmic notes that you are teaching them. Rhythm bingo looks like this. So one of the reasons I love rhythm bingo is when you have that non-music sub that you have no idea what to do with. I have all of mine in folders. And I have, it's 35 different cards. These are my calling cards. The sub needs to know exactly 0 things about music. They just have to be able to read some simple words and read the directions over here. There's several different levels of them, and the calling cards are here. I will say on Music Note Bingo 1 and 2, because there's not enough notes, you'll notice like right here and right here, there's 2 whole rests. You just have to say you may only cover 1 the first time it's called. If you hear it again, then you can cover a second one. You can't move it to make yourself have a bingo at some point. But again, the calling cards, very non-music sub friendly. Music Undercover. This is a fun game. There's different levels of it, and you play it with a partner, and you just roll dice. Whatever the dice says, if it says, you know, you get a 3, cover a dotted half note. So you'd cover a dotted half note on your side, like if this was partner 1 and this is partner 2. There are labeled versions as well, so that if kids don't know the answers as well, you can do that. Or if you want, you could write it up on the board. Really great for just, hey, I'm finished early, or we're going to do centers. This is pretty easy to set up. Monster Note and Rest Match. So this is like a memory game, except you're not matching like quarter note to quarter note. You're going to match quarter note to quarter rest. So what I do is I play it as a whole class first. And then when we do it as centers, there's a blue set, which are all of the, you know, the notes. And this one would be all of the rests. And then they flip 1 pink and 1 blue. And if they match in value, in duration, then they've got a pair, okay? The one tricky thing is if they turn over a monster, like you would have to freeze, and people take turns flipping over the pink cards until someone gets the corresponding monster, and then you can go back and move on to playing the game. So again, good for centers, just kind of makes them realize, hey, a half note is worth the same duration as a half rest. Ants on a Log. This is a little dictation kit that just has really simple rhythms, and I just realized that music notes kind of looked like little ants, and so that's where I got that from. Spaghetti and Meatballs. So these little containers, by the way, are super great they're from the Dollar Tree. And they're great for bingo chips because they're easy enough for the kids to open. I think you get like 10 or 12 of them for $1.25. Totally worth my money. I did try it with these spaghetti and meatballs, but if you notice, the strings are a little curved after being held in here. So I would maybe put these, if I had to redo it, in plastic bags. Another thing that I didn't put on there, but that you could use, are popsicle sticks to write out rhythms. If you want to make a rest, you kind of make it look like a Z using 3 of these. And I would like to say, look for mini craft sticks. These are like 2 inches long instead of the normal popsicle stick size, and it makes it so much easier for kids to write them out and not take up half of your classroom while they're doing it. So those are some ways you can write it out. Leading into separate parts. So you could start by having kids echo rhythms and beats after you, 4 beats after. So if you go ta, 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 so they're echoing 4 beats after you. And when we first start doing this, I make sure I start with every other thing I do is just 4 beats. So I could do rhythm 4 beats, beat, 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 rhythm 4 beats. It makes it not as hard for them. Once they've caught on to hearing something different than they're actually doing, then you can start doing 4 beats of rhythm each time, because it's very hard for them to learn to listen while they're also doing a different rhythm pattern. Okay, let's go back to rhythm cards. These are super useful. Read 2 different cards at the same time. So maybe when you first start doing this, the teacher is the one who reads one set, and then against the class who reads a different set. They like that. Then you would split maybe to 2 different groups of students doing it against each other. One group reads a rhythm backward while another one reads it forward. What's really fun is to do this on a rhythm where it's the same reading it backward and forward, and then they're like, wait a minute, we just did the same thing. So that's kind of fun. One group picks a rhythm as an ostinato, and then another group reads an entire set of rhythms over top of it. Pick whatever rhythm you want to read until you've read all 4. So I normally have 4 rhythm cards up there, and I'll say, okay, don't tell anyone which one you're going to read. We're all going to read whatever one we want. And then we should all end at the same time if we did it right. 1, 2, ready, go, And then I'll say, okay, now pick a different one you haven't done yet. And then by the end of it, they've read all 4 of them independently and have had to be able to read them just by keeping the beat, but not joining in with what everybody else is doing. All right, rhythmic and spoken canons are good. So you could do it, with singing or without, but a spoken canon can be really a good way to lead into separate parts. You could also do 2-part pieces, starting simply and then expanding upon that. I have an activity I do called Harvest Time, and it's a canon of singing, and then we add rhythms at the end. I have these pumpkins hanging around in my room, and they're 8-beat rhythms, and I put them all over the floor, and kids have to pick them up and do the rhythm at the end of the song. It goes like this. Harvest is a time to pick a thing or two, so walk around the room and pick a rhythm next to you. 1, 2, ready, and here you go. Ta, ti, 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 ta, rest, ta, ticka, ticka, ta. And then they would go back to singing. Now, once kids are comfortable doing this like I just did, and can pretty much do it on their own, then you can start doing it in canon. Harvest is a, harvest is a, harvest is a. So then even at the end, the rhythms are in canon, which can be super fun. Here's one I did that was a 2-part example of rhythm reading when kids were obsessed with Among Us. So I was like, big drums among us, big, big, little drums among us, small, small. So the big drums played the first line, then the little ones played the second line. Getting our work done wherever we go. Find a task and don't be slow. Sus. Sus. Saw you sneaking round and now you're sus. I said you're sus. Okay? So, and then we talk about in class, we go through and go, okay, what order are we going to do it in? Okay, we're going to do A, then we're going to do B, and then we're going to do A and B together, and how are we going to make that work? But the fun part of it for them was, I said, okay, when you get to the coda, you have to shut your eyes, and I'm going to pick 2 kids ahead of time who are going to play the imposters. And you have to listen and try to figure out who they are. And so the imposters are the only people allowed to play on this rest here. So it goes, who's the imposter? Give us a hint. Who's the imposter? Play right here. And they listen, and they are so into finding those imposters. But this is leading them into, creating forms and reading rhythms. And this is great because it has syncopa in it. That was one of the things I was working on when I created this. So student created rhythms. The Crab Rave is a song they all love. You can make your own movements to it. It's an ABC thing. But what I love is the introduction has this very clear ta, ta, ti, ti, ta, 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 ti, ti, ta. Have them change the introduction to have a counter rhythm that goes with it and talk about what counter rhythms are and why they sound good together. That would be a fun activity. Question and answer rhythms. So maybe you're like, okay, if I was asking you, hi, what's your name? You would say, my name is, and you would use part of the question in your answer. So you might do that same thing. Ti, ti, ticka, ticka, ta, ta, ti, ti, ta. Ticka, ticka, ta. So you use parts of the question in your answer and practice that first with teacher, with students, and then student to student doing question and answer. Eraser composing. So these cool little erasers that they always have at the Target dollar area that the rest of us all spend $1 million at for no reason, right? Or maybe for great reason. You can use them to create composing opportunities. So spider, skull, and you might do like jack-o'-lantern, ghost, or whatever. And there's lots of different options. And you can use these to have kids, maybe they just literally put the erasers down and they don't write anything. Or as they get older, they're like, oh, spider. That's 2 sounds on 1 beat. That's going to be TT, and I'm going to write that down. So eraser composing is really fun. Harvest time. So I just sang that harvest time activity for you. I'm going to show you what I use to have kids create their own rhythms. And then Baby Shark on recorders. I know. You're all going, really? But it's actually a perfect activity to teach F sharp, llama, F sharp. And it's also a really good, simple composing exercise for them. So here's the harvest time rhythm pattern. Basically, they're creating one of these on their own. You can have them cut it out or just do the papers and put them around the room and do it with student-created rhythms. And, you're going to want to double check it so that someone doesn't have 17 half notes or something written down, but you'd be surprised. I actually, master's degree in music, wrote one of these wrong. I had too many beats in one of them. I don't know what I was thinking that day. And I had a student catch it. And I was like, that made me so proud. They were like, you messed up. And I was like, no, I didn't. Did I? And I looked at it, and lo and behold, they were right. They got a prize. Baby Shark. So you could have them, it's that whole... You can have them do a simple thing to start with, and then you're like, okay, you're going to take the doo-doo section, maybe don't call it that, but the doo-doo section, or call it that, depending on who your students are. You're going to take it and you get to change it. And these notes are the ones you can use. Maybe you're like, you can use 16th notes, you can use rests, you can use 8th note pairs, and you can use quarter notes. And so then they can change it to... And then I also let my students create their own sort of shark. So maybe it's taco shark or football shark or, elevator shark. I don't know. And they kind of come up with some really cool and creative ideas. You can even have them change the notes. If you're like, okay, I'm going to let them choose what notes are right here, you can do that. So here's the takeaways from today's session. Repetition of rhythms over time is key. You can't just do it once and expect kids to get it. You need to bring it back every time they see you. Be consistent with rhythm syllables. Whatever system you choose is right for you. The one thing I would say is if you share any classes or they're going to go on to another teacher, like if you teach K1 and then they go on to 2-3, maybe both of you decide on the same rhythm syllables so that kids don't have to transition quite so quickly. Make sure you use as much variety as possible when you are teaching rhythms so that students stay engaged. They will get bored and zone out. Make rhythm reading as playful as possible. If you have other ideas of how to teach rhythms fun, please tell me. But make sure we're not ever losing the purpose behind the activity. Just some info for you. My store on TPT, Noteworthy by Jen, is 20% off through July 23rd of this year. Here are some links to some of the activities I shared, although you will find the harvest time information in your packet if you have downloaded the handout. These are where my graphics and fonts are from. If you have any questions, please email me at noteworthybyjen@gmail.com. I try to get back to people within 48 hours. I will say I'm a full-time working mom, and so if you don't hear back from me within 48 hours, feel free to email me again. Thank you so much for taking time to learn and grow as a music teacher today, and I hope this was helpful to you.